What should you do when at times, every minute of every day, you feel nothing but tired of the same conversations, the inaction and the helplessness, the continued degeneration of society, the greed of the few, and the stupidity of the many? Everyone around you covers their eyes and plays the game, pretending nothing is happening, that everything is fine, great even. Global poverty levels and preventable death are at the lowest rates of any point in history. But the wealth gap continues to grow, the middle class continues to disappear, obesity rates and drug use continue to increase. A younger generation putting down the bottle and picking up a joint or a vape, arguably less unhealthy than drinking, but still grossly missing the point, choosing to be the skinniest person at Weight Watchers as opposed to the healthiest they can be. When the bar is so absurdly low, but it is somehow still celebrated to be fractionally above it, not caring to achieve greatness. If it's easier to avoid absolute failure when following through with what you say is such a rarity that the surprise is being good to your word, not failing to do so. If man doesn't have his word, then he has nothing, and how true that is today. And it might have even been true yesterday, and will probably still be true tomorrow. Maybe man was never supposed to get this far, intended by nature or by God, if there's even a difference, to be little more than an experiment, a blip in time for the history of the earth, never surpassing sticks and stones, continuing to look upward with wonder, asking questions but finding no answers, looking inward only to decide if hungry or tired, not to question the meaning of it all, if finding any at all. Hardwired to find purpose in the continuation of the species and the bloodline, but falling victim to his own mind, unsure where to begin, with the mind seeming to spin, infinitely failing to answer what philosophers have pondered for millennia. What makes you think you're so special that you can find solutions where greater men failed, with the likes of Plato or Nietzsche? The world around you appears to be designed to take advantage of your weakness, consumerism running rampant, porn addiction and men and women raking in the cash, while simultaneously claiming lack of need for these same men. Has it always been this way? Perhaps or perhaps not. Throughout history, there are meteoric rises of civilizations and even more violent crashes. Maybe we are past the peak of this cycle. With no meaningful improvements in technology since the internet, what is actually being created today, new diseases being discovered faster than the old can be cured, and with antibiotic-resistant strains due to overprescription. When going to the doctors makes you sick, although in good health before the visit, has healthcare really improved? Your peers telling you to spend decades of your life in debt, to go to universities for pieces of paper equivalent to unemployment certificates, and overinflated homes that would have been torn down and rebuilt 100 years ago. Who exactly is it that benefits? World governments and leaders desperate to convince you of their utility while spending your tax dollars on failed project after failed project. Funding forever wars and encouraging Orwellian wrong-think, changing the rules as it suits them. Today's ally being yesterday's foe. The theft of the rich being on the mind of many. Stories like Robin Hood being celebrated willfully and blissfully ignorant that his primary targets were the government, not the rich. Every election is about choosing the least bad option with no choice for a good option. In-group, out-group preference being taken to its extremes, riots, protests, constant squabbling over meaningless debate. Did you catch the game last night? The idea of controlling a population being so simple is as old as society itself, whether by Roman emperors or whomever you attribute the power to today. Give them bread and circuses and they will never revolt, is a quote attributed to Juvenal, a Roman poet active in the late 1st and early 2nd century CE. Heavy physical work, the care of home and children, petty quarrels with neighbors, films, football, beer, and above all, gambling filled up the horizon of their minds. as written by the well-known author George Orwell. It sometimes seems ridiculous that a serious populace would allow itself to continue in such a way. But then you remember estimations like 30 to 70% of people not having an inner monologue, literally lacking the capacity to speak to themselves, or, in other words, the ability to think. Again, a preposterous idea to think about, but then you remember the apparent ease that public opinion is swayed. Remember those you personally know who consistently fall at the lowest mental hurdles. Was it always this bad? Are we doomed to continue this way? Films like Idiocracy feel so close to home that execs try to bury it, trying to avoid releasing them, and when they are finally forced to, only for short times in certain areas. And with a movie premise of an increasing population coupled with significantly decreasing intelligence, can you blame them? For quite possibly the first time in human history, particularly in recorded history, average IQ levels are falling. While countries like China continue to have a strong focus on education and learning for their children in the West, we have raised the iPad kids. Parents find it far too easy to put a screen in front of their children, with a stranger teaching them how the world works and basic morality. A job these strangers all too often fail at, and sometimes even maliciously, hurting only their attention spans and allowing them to believe the world should change for them as opposed to them needing to self-improve and help create the world they wish to see. During and after World War II, the US military conducted extensive IQ testing, finding that individuals with IQs below 85 were untrainable and could only perform simple tasks. The weight of this cannot be understated. Even the United States military, a group infamous for using lives as little more than cannon fodder, can't find any use or any value in a person with an IQ score below 85. Depending on your source, that means between 10 and 32% of the population lack any capacity whatsoever to be productive in any circumstance, and we have absolutely no idea what to do with these people. So we take the easy road and we pay them governmental social income. We use what is essentially Marxist theory to take from the productive and give to the unproductive. We put them to work in fast food restaurants and give them credit cards and send them out into the world. Once they have grouped together into jobs probably undeserved in the first place and failed to become proficient, somehow these same people become managers, executives, and directors. Bosses that are clueless as to how the business actually runs, whether stupidity, arrogance, or both. Their own opinions and ideas are mandated to be followed without consideration of diversity of thought. Diversity of thought is the wrong kind of diversity. To fit in and or to be left alone, you have to shut up and crawl into whatever box society fits you into, damned if you do, and certainly damned if you don't. The weight of hierarchies of lower levels of consciousness feels crushing, a burden that can't be lifted, can't be transferred or reasoned with. It doesn't matter what you think or what you do, you can't escape. You will comply or face the consequences. You have no power. You are just a madman screaming into the void, never being heard, let alone taken seriously. There is a common phrase, it's idiots all the way up. Humans are the only species who allow the most foolish among them to climb the highest up the chain. The bigger the chain, the bigger the fool. Consequences of bad decision-making have a huge impact, even within small local governments or private companies. But you are the greater fool if you think these decision makers will face any repercussions or even lose a wink of sleep. The drones will carry on day to day and have something new to complain about tomorrow, totally unaware of the frequent crimes that take place. The lobbying of politicians, the embezzlement of funds, and the shortcuts putting lives at risk every day. Getting news from celebrities and biased publications, learning only the acceptable headlines without thought to look deeper. This would usually be the part that I say, although everything seems bad, it will get better. It's already getting better. You just haven't noticed for this or that reason. But I'm not going to do that. It doesn't seem obvious that it would be true, and I don't like to lie. With that said though, you probably noticed my name is Optimistic Nihilist. I make no promises, but perhaps in another video, that optimism will be more obvious. Things have the potential to improve, but I'm not convinced we have what it takes as a society. If you liked what I had to say and want to hear more, consider liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Or, if you think I'm full of more baloney than a butcher, leave a comment below.